drug abuse, cancer,
measles, diabetes, AIDS, cancer.
Good evening and welcome again. It's Doctor and Call for today, the 4th day of March 2025. It's a pleasure as always to be with you, and of course, as always, we will be sharing information with you, of course, as Doc always says, to help improve or better your wellness. Last week we spoke a bit about, we spoke on cancer. We've been focused on cancer for the month of February. We looked at cancers in men. Last week we looked at childhood obesity and how that can lead to cancer in adult women. This week we're looking specifically at childhood obesity, which is a very, very serious health condition, of course, in children. So Dr. Nixon is with us, and of course Dr. Noel is back with us this week. And hey, we are going to have a very wonderful discussion. I have a little introduction I want to share with you, but before I do that, it's always good and proper to welcome all our viewers on GBN Television, our friends on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and of course you, our listeners on K105 FM. And last but not least, we must welcome our guests, and let's start with Dr. Noel. Good evening. It's so good to have you back. How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks, Godfrey. Glad to be here.
Oh, lovely, lovely. We're going to have a great one this evening. Dr. Nixon, how are you doing? How was the week? I trust all is well.
It's always well and heading towards the best.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Good evening to Grenada. Today was World Obesity Day, and our young people came through because we really focused on childhood obesity. But good evening to everybody who's listening on us, especially our friends in the diaspora. My special friends. I have some friends who watch us every week. So. And I know it's cold up there, but hey, we can't help it. It's kind of hot down here.
Yes. So, Doc, this evening we continue our discussion on childhood obesity. And before I hand over to both yourself and Dr. Noel, I was doing a little reading and I came across a very interesting piece on one of the sites I use, a credible site, Mayo Clinic. And I wanted to share this, based on what we're discussing this evening. So, the overview says childhood obesity is a serious health condition that involves having excess body fat early in life. The extra weight often starts children on the path to other health conditions such as diabetes and high blood pressure. Childhood obesity also can lead to poor self-esteem and depression. And this is an area I really want us to look at, because I think it is very, very important as well. The symptoms of childhood obesity aren't straightforward or simply based on how children look, and various factors can play a part in causing this condition. Some factors may be within a family's ability to change, such as eating and physical activity habits. Many other possible factors can't be changed, such those related to genes and hormones. Of course, we can all help manage or prevent childhood obesity by having our whole family regularly eating balanced meals and snacks. It also helps for the whole family to lead an active lifestyle. Such steps can protect our children's health now and in the future. So I wanted to share that because I think, it sets a wonderful platform for our discussion this evening. And so, Doc, I am now going to hand over to you, and then, of course, Dr. Noel, you take it and let's speak on this very, very important issue because, as we go around, I'm sure we come across a lot of children who are obese, and it is not a good thing.
No, it is not a good thing. It's not a good thing when
and go on. Now, and Dr. Nixon spoke on a number of very important things, but I want to start from the beginning, the very beginning. It is a common thing in our culture, in Grenada, and I'm going to speak specifically here, that when a child is born, and that child starts getting into a couple of weeks, if that child is not fat and bouncy and chubby, the child is not supposed to be a nice child. We like the child that is fat and bouncy and fat chicks and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, size does not mean health, It's interesting. And I mean, that goes for children and adults as well. It's, as we talked last week about being able to measure obesity, that goes for a child. So when a child's born and then the mother takes the baby to the clinic for the health checks and the regular health checks as they're an infant, those health checks are very, very important because charting a baby's growth from the size they are and the weight they are at birth, and then moving on, that is very important to see if you want your child to put on weight. Every child's supposed to put on weight. Every baby's supposed to put on weight, but within limits. You know what I mean? You don't want them to putting on. And this comes down to the importance of breastfeeding. So when you look at childhood obesity, there are so many different factors. There's the whole lifespan of the child where you can initiate change. And the very first one is, well, it goes back even before the baby's born. It's what the mother eats when she's pregnant, right? So when a mother's pregnant, a mother should be recognizing that she should be eating fresh vegetables and fruit, drinking mainly water, not drinking a lot of sugary drinks, because even as a pregnant woman, you can get what's called gestational diabetes. So you can become diabetic just while you're pregnant, because your body is under more pressure. Things change, your hormones change, and you can be more susceptible. So what you eat affects your baby. All right, you are nourishing your baby through the placenta, and this can have an impact on how the baby is born. And then once the baby's born, breast is best. And breast milk was made for our babies. That's what they're supposed to drink and nourish. And a baby should be exclusively breastfed till at least 6 months old, and preferably to a year, with a very gentle addition of foods in a very particular order for that baby's health. So I know that sometimes medically there are conditions where a mother can't breastfeed. It's impossible for her, and we're not talking about that, But other than that, every woman should be encouraged to breastfeed, because that is the perfect formula. A baby cries, a baby's hungry, you breastfeed it. Right? You can't overfeed a baby breastfeeding. You cannot. It doesn't happen. Right? If that's all you're giving the baby, that's all it needs. So right from the start, you're setting your baby up with the right food for it, plus all the antibodies and protection against infection that come from the mother. So and when we're looking at policy and the childhood obesity policy that we have submitted to the Ministry of Health, one of the areas is the importance of breastfeeding. And Grenada has had quite a good record for breastfeeding, but it's something that needs to be encouraged, needs to be advertised, and women need support. It's not easy breastfeeding. I've had 4 children. It's not easy breastfeeding always. And, women need support. They need encouragement. And in the workplace, they need to be able to go back to work, but be able to express breast milk and have an area at work where they can do that. In the preschools, there need to be areas where breast milk can be kept in the fridge, etc., so that can be fed rather than formula to the baby, so that the mother has the opportunity to breastfeed her baby for as long as she wants. And that's one of the first things of the policy that we have, is the importance of breastfeeding, and breastfeeding continuing as long as the mother wants. So that's one of the first things, and then as you wean a baby, there's suggested ways that you wean a baby as well. You don't just give the baby sugary foods to start with. Right. A baby develops taste as well. and yes, the baby might spit food out or not like the taste to start with, but if you keep introducing it in little amounts and you start with very bland tasting food, and you tend to start with vegetables rather than fruits, so that a baby acquires taste. And you'll be surprised, a baby will acquire taste, which will become a young child who acquires taste. And if they're acquiring taste of healthy foods, they won't even
Dr. Nixon, one of the issues, as it relates to some of what Dr. Noel has said, in terms of breastfeeding and ensuring that you start feeding the children with healthy stuff so they can acquire taste. There is the issue of economics involved. It's something that we can't run away from. How do we, because what we feed our children, that can play heavily on controlling obesity. But if there is an economic issue, what do we do?
What do you mean by economic issue? Because breastfeeding is the cheapest way to feed your baby.
Right, yeah, but also the baby is growing, and as the baby is growing, and of course you would get to a point where the baby is weaned, and then you have to start introducing the different foods and all of that. When we get to that stage, that's where I think the economics kick in. So it is something that must be given some kind of consideration.
You notice, for example, that there are no ads on TV for infant formula?
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Go to American TV. They will sell you beer, but they don't sell you infant formula. The truth is, if you taste infant formula, it's loaded with sugar. Absolutely loaded with sugar, right? And there's one thing that you mentioned in the beginning that's very important, the whole cultural aspect of body, what a child's body looks like. Our grandparents let us see, the child will tell us, this child's so mager, you're not feeding the child, right? Make porridge, make this, make that, right? And they'll make porridge and probably not put the amount of milk that is required. And so our children look nice and plump, but they have malnutrition. They have, protein, energy, malnutrition, right? So those are a lot of the things that you have to look for.
But Doc, quickly, let me just butt in. And I'm glad you mentioned that term malnutrition, because in our culture, malnutrition basically means a baby that's not fat, a baby that's thin.
Mother boy.
It means both.
There are little mega children who are in fact
right.
who also have malnutrition. The kids that just don't have enough food. I was driving there and I had to show my nephew a little boy, and it broke my heart because he looked at the mother and she had two children and all three of them had malnutrition. The young child very thin, with very small muscles, almost no muscle mass, right? Red hair, gaunt-looking features, and his eyes sunken, temporal muscular loss, cheek fat absent, belly a little big, and just no muscles on the chest and stuff, and no fat on. No, you could know that he's missing something. But this is 2025. Trust me, I can pick up my phone and talk to somebody in Siberia in real time. Why are our children not having proper nutrition? And you did mention the economic part of it. And I think it's very important that we recognize that, because we can sit and do all the platitudes and make all the demands and still do not focus on what's important. It is important that we're able to transition our children from one level of feeding to another seamlessly. Okay, our children deserve that. They have the right, according to the Treaty of the Rights of the Child. They have the Convention on the Rights of the Child. They have the right to nutrition. They have a right to health, to education. They have a right to health, right? They have a right to general well-being. It is important that the wellness of a child start from even before the mother gets pregnant. you're going to have children, feed yourself properly. Because Dr. Noel did mention the issue of gestational diabetes. The child who has gone through a pregnancy that is that has gestational diabetes, where the mother developed diabetes in pregnancy, is likely to be diabetic, much more likely than you and I, who may have not had that experience in the uterus of her mother. So that's already, when you start off there, you start off bad. The child who is born out of a gestational diabetes situation is only one big baby. He's going to have big old cells, big fat cells, loaded with fat, and all the rest of it. And he's going to crash at birth for sugar, because all of a sudden you take away this storage, this source of sugar. Poof. Right? So we have to know that the mother has diabetes. And that's why it's important for our mothers to be responsible. Once you miss a period and you guess you may be pregnant, you should be going to the doctor. There's free clinic for us to go to. So we can follow all these things from early and correct them, so that the fetus, the child who becomes the baby eventually, does not have to deal with all of those challenges. But you talk about feeding our children beyond breastfeeding, okay? And Dr. Noel is correct. Obligatory for 6 months. We have to congratulate the Caribbean. Grenada, I want to connect, because up to many years ago, we didn't have maternal leave, okay? So now we have 3 months maternal leave. So mothers have those 3 months in which they can totally engage in breastfeeding. Thank you, God. But there are countries where you get a year maternity leave. One of these good years, maybe with my great-grandchildren, my granddaughter might be able to stay home and breastfeed a child for a year. There are other countries where they really value the birth of children, countries with very low birth rate that have a lot of money, really push for women to stay home up to 2 years so that they can breastfeed. You're supposed to breastfeed exclusively 6 months. You introduce new foods up to a year, and preferably, if you can leave breastfeeding for up to 2 years, we good, right? Because we know what the benefits are. Children's brain development is better. Their nutritional development is perfect. And breastfed baby look fat. They look nice and robust. The moment they start to run up and down, all that fat disappears. The moment the child becomes very active and can run up and down the house by himself, he starts slimming down. You see the presence of those little muscles, those healthy little muscles, right? But we must ensure that our people have the food that we need to give children. And that's where policy comes in. Are we going to subsidize? I don't know what's going to happen. We must, they must include, when you're having a proper nutrition mandate, that the policies, how are we going to guarantee that our children have good nutrition when they're 2 and 3 and 4, right? Some of our children go to daycare. I know a lot of the daycares have their little garden, and they provide food, and they cook proper meals, and they have the menu, and you're not supposed to bring sugar sweetened beverages, and you're not supposed to bring those noisy snacks, those useless snacks that we give to our children. But it is important that our government ensures, in trying to prevent this challenge of childhood obesity, that the government ensures that there are policies in place. Are we going to make sure food production is? Are we going to make sure that women have access? Are we going to make sure that the people who are already living in that safety net have the safety net of proper food? Are we going to make sure there's proper nutrition counseling for all women, right? And whatever support is required, especially at the primary care level. Those are the things we have to focus on. How are we going to ensure that nationally we can obligate ourselves to ensure that our population, especially our very young and most vulnerable of our population, is fed appropriately so they can be of benefit to the society as they grow. Then we get to school. Early school and big school, up to Form 5, 6, okay? School-age children. Mrs. Brown speaks all the time about the school nutrition policy. We have had a school nutrition policy forever, for 10 years? That has been supposed to have been implemented, especially at the school level, where our children spend a long time, right? Some children may have breakfast at school, right? But they certainly have lunch, and they have break, and they might have an afternoon snack. How are we going to propose and prepare appropriate food for our children? Are we going to allow them to have those nutrient absent foods, carbohydrate dense, eating the pasta, eating the bread, eating the rice, and not even brown bread and brown rice, just and whole wheat pasta? just washed flour compressed into pasta, or washed flour making dumpling, washed flour with all the nutrients removed, making bread for our children to eat. And of course, the washed rice. I don't know what they do when they take out all the nutrients out of the rice, right? And give them large portions, right? Large portions of carbohydrates, very little protein. And most of our children don't eat greens because we don't eat greens. I don't like vegetables, so I'm not feeding my child on that. And I'm talking about it. I eat enough fig and yam and banana and I call it whatever ground feed and breadfruit. My children not eating that. That tends to be the attitude of some of our people who don't know better. I'm not giving my children that in their lunch plan to go to school, so that children can laugh at them at school, because we lack that national education as to what nutrient-dense foods are. Excuse me. Nutrient-dense foods are foods that have the appropriate concentration of the nutrients that are required. Yes, we need some starch. We need it for energy, especially children who should be running up and down. But we must have some protein in there, whether you get it from milk, peas, beans, cheese, egg, fish, where you get it from. You must have that. And of course, the children have to have the greens that have the fiber and have the water and have all the other macro and micronutrients that they need to develop proper brains, to be able to focus, to have muscles, whatever, for development and growth, especially like in adolescence. And then like our 4 years, I have that first growth spurt. We need to be able to feed our children properly, but we also need to be taught how to do this. And we must make sure that we have food safety, food security measures in place that ensure that our children can access food.
Okay. Dr. Noel, question. So, when we're talking obesity, overweight, there must be a point at which we can say, all right, this child is too heavy, this child is overweight. But is it a case where all children who, let's say, have a couple extra pounds are considered overweight?
No, I mean, the World Health Organization has charted weights of children, thousands of weights of children, and have like graphical interpretation. So we can,
Something that some people are not hearing.
Yeah, okay. I would ask our technicians to have a look at that. But Dr. Noel, what any consideration should be given to, let's say, a child who has let's say a little above average body frame, and I'm asking that in the context of the weight here.
I mean, yes, there is obviously. You have children who are finely boned. That might be one way of putting it. Finely boned. There are other children who are just built bigger. They have wider hips. They may have wider thoracic, chest size. And so their weight and height may be a little above. And then that's where other measurements like waist measurements, neck measurements, you can also do caliper measurements of fat around the abdomen as well. So you could. But again, I think it's also trend. I think trend is important as well. So you may have a child who is tall for their age, because you can chart height separately. You can chart weight separately, and then you can chart BMI, right? So you may have a child who is very tall. You may have a child who is very short, and so you're going to look at not just one measurement. That's making it sort of simple, but you're going to look at the overall child as well, and then look at the family as well. Because if you've got a 6'4" father and maybe a 5'11" mother, you're unlikely to be really, really short.
Right,
it can happen, but genetically. So yes, and by
Remember that BMI is intimately related to height, is weight and height.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that most children will fall under the curve. And that's why you have percentiles. It gives you an average, right? You may have a child who's out of the thing, but like Jane says, if you're doing constant follow-up, right? And then you could always do fat, because remember, obesity is related to fat. Obesity is related to fat. So you can have a big child, but he's not fat.
Right. Mm-hmm. Dr. Noel, I'm staying with you still. So if a mother comes to the physician with her child, and she's concerned that the child is overweight, what kind of questions, for example, or what kind of symptoms would the doctor inquire of to make that determination and then do a proper diagnosis?
Yeah, after measuring the child and the heights, the weights and all that kind of thing, so you've got some, if you like, graphical proof in a way of the picture that you are seeing. Then you would also inquire about sort of appetite, diet, activities. You'd also inquire about how they're getting on in school, maybe like how emotionally the child is, whether the child's sleeping.
Short break. I just want to address that sound issue. So we take a quick break and we'll come right back. Stay with us, folks. We'll be back with you in just a moment.
Drug abuse, cancer, Right Choice Promotions in association with Investment Migration Agency of Grenada, together with our Riser Credit Union, presents the inaugural Virgin Parish Relay Meet. This is the real Mini Olympics, Saturday, March 8th. Las Sages Playing Field in St. David. Relay action featuring the top clubs and schools from across Grenada, competing for cash prizes and more. Come see the nation's best athletes as they prepare for Intercall and Carifta Games 2025. First call to action is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, featuring live entertainment and excitement in the tug-of-war competition. Admission $10 adults, $5 children. Come to Virgin Parish, St. David on Saturday, March 8th for the Virgin Parish Relay Meet. Come share in the excitement and speed and see you there.
Get value you'll love only at Quartz. With huge savings on select mattresses, mobile phones, and TVs. You'll also love our new arrivals in furniture and appliances. Plus, when you shop, get a chance to win great prizes. So come in, shop today, and pay later with Quartz Ready Finance. Get value you'll love only at Quartz. Bringing value home. Offer ends February 24, 2025. See store for details.
Have you heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue. Available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Mobility, a common theme woven into the very fabric of human history. From ancient wanderers to modern explorers, our instinct to move, to seek something greater, and to grow has always driven us forward. Imagine a journey into pathways of boundless opportunities and endless possibilities. A collective future where the vibrant rhythms of the Caribbean, rich culture, and welcoming community create unforgettable experiences. Beyond citizenship by investment, we believe in our collective investment of time, resources, and energy that fosters innovation, creates jobs, and enriches lives, driving the growth of an entire nation. The Investment Migration Agency Grenada boasts over a decade of exceptional service and remains committed to guiding you toward global mobility and economic freedom through investment. Your journey becomes our shared story of progress and prosperity. This is an invitation to be part of something greater, something enduring. Begin your journey at imagrenada.gd. IMA Grenada. Unlock the possibilities.
Looking to shop online from your favorite stores like Amazon and Shein? With GPC Global, it's never been easier. Get your very own US address and shop from around the world. With GPC Global, you can order the latest trends and must-have items, all delivered straight to Grenada to your closest post office for your pickup. We offer the cheapest rates, and our service is reliable and quick. No more waiting for weeks for your packages. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. Join the Grenada Postal family today and start shopping smarter. Visit us online at www.grenadapostal.com or call us on 437-POST. That's 437-7678. GPC Global, your gateway to the world.
Grenada. Drug abuse. Cancer.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Doctor and Call. Those of you just joining us, we're discussing the issue or health issue of childhood obesity. Dr. Nixon is with us, and Dr. Noel is also with us. Also, in regards to the audio issue we had, I think it should be okay now. I had our technicians check on it, and they've showed me that that problem should be gone. So we apologize for that, and let's hope that everything is in order. So we continue with the discussion, and Dr. Nixon, I'll come back to you now. Dr. Noel spoke about a number of issues there, very critical, and some of the factors that are involved. One of them has to do with the genetic and hormonal factors. One of them that we cannot prevent. How do we deal with that? Because, of course, obesity is a problem. But if it's something that we have no control over, let's say, for example, like eating habits or lack of exercise, how do we deal with that part of the problem?
So if you have genetic issues, it probably manifests itself in a family. So it's not, Dr. Ran made a point, and I don't know if it came out as clearly as you should. We should be seeing our children regularly. And most times we see children with their mothers or maybe their grandmothers. And one of the questions we should ask, how does the family eat? What does a family pot look like? What do you guys eat? Because some people say, oh, it's running with family. I was asked that question this morning. Big this running family. You has a big old plate. So you have to make sure that it's not a plate of food, but it's something else inherent, okay? And it may not affect everybody's. And if you suspect that a child has a hormonal problems, there are doctors whom they can see, like Dr. Matthias, who's an endocrinologist, and as such, right? And those children will have ongoing. There's thyroid problems that can cause us to have obesity, right? And there are other diseases that are related to that, other clinical manifestations in children, like dwarfism, etc., right? Slow learning, slow mental development or poor mental development. There are other things. So it is important that even if you're trying everything, that you really should look at the child in a very holistic way, right? The genetic part of it, I think a lot of what we call genetics are really just family lifestyles. Because you would see mother and everybody, when you see them come to the supermarket with a big basket or the portions that they serve, right? That is familiar. That is behaviors at home that can be educated upon, and that can be changed if we intervene, if we help the whole family. And that is why you have to ask how you guys eat.
Right. Also, issues of let's say stress and all of that. So, for example, if the environment within which a child is living or is living is not conducive, or has the child under stress, the child is not comfortable, the child is not happy, can that also play a part in obesity? Dr. Noel? Yeah.
So cortisol is our stress hormone, and it kind of inverts how our body uses its food, especially its carbohydrates. So you'd find that a child or a person, a child is a person, but you'd find that a child who has stress, whether this child is being abused physically or otherwise, whether the child has mental illness, whether the child is scared, is having problems at work, whether he has some form of phobia, some kind of mental illness, whatever it is. Once the cortisol levels get high, or he can have problems with his adrenal glands, and there are illnesses, right? And that can make the child modify the way it manipulates its carbohydrates in particular. And again, that is why it is important to not just say, oh, your child is fat, and just say, change that. You have to see the child on an ongoing basis. And sometimes it's necessary that a child in primary care get to see the pediatrician who manages that much better. It is very important. You ask about, I brought my child and I thought my child was overweight. I think it is very important that there be ongoing investigation of that child. And, you can do the other interventions like the nutrition and the running up and down and the playing and being active. But you do have to look for stressors. You do have to look for other factors that can influence what a child's body looks like. And is not necessarily related to his quality of food. A lot of us are big, but because we have problems, our cortisol levels are so high, once you could get it down, the weight will go away. Your body starts to metabolize what you eat in a different way.
Okay. Dr. Noel, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would say also, we know as adults when...
I'm hardly hearing anything from you guys.
Can you hear me? You hear me now?
Go ahead. I listen keenly.
Yeah. I was saying, I think it's interesting that as an adult, when you are stressed, you can feel like you need to eat something. Like you might go and eat a bar of chocolate, or you might go and eat ice cream. It's called comfort food. All right, You're stressed, you're unhappy, you've had a terrible day. You go to the fridge, you take the first thing that's sweet, and you think it will make you feel better. Right? Stress eating, comfort eating. Well, children have the same thing. All right, so a child will do the same thing. Something that gives them comfort, they're going to go and eat that. So the same thing, just like an adult can be stressed and it can affect their diet and it can affect how they digest it and how they metabolize it. It's the same situation with a child, and we often forget that children have all these emotions inside. School is high pressure these days. I think there's a lot of bullying over cyber media of children. And I think all these factors can contribute to a child being unhappy and the stress eating, etc., etc. And then it becomes a vicious circle. They become overweight. They become more miserable. They don't like their body image. They get teased. They eat more because it's like a vicious cycle.
Okay. What about certain medications? For example, I was doing some reading again, and for example, one of the medication that reference was made to as it relates to the risk of obesity is prednisone. For example, people with asthma, for example, who use prednisone. How do we address something like that? Because we're looking at a sort of double whammy.
So, 30 years ago, when we realized that asthma was an inflammatory disease and that it responded to steroids, we started on prednisolone. But today you hear things as Symbicort, you hear Betacort, and lots of advanced things. So the delivery of steroids, right, is a lot different from when you had to give prednisolone. You start on high doses of prednisolone, and it caused all those symptoms: the puffy face, the big tummy, skinny legs, the humpback, and those cushingoid syndromes, features. The truth is, prednisolone is not such a big factor in asthma treatment now. Mm-hmm. And if you gave prednisolone, you probably give high doses for like 5 days, because we know for most asthmatics, it is easy to control the asthma attacks, and prevent the asthma attacks by the use of inhaled steroids, which deliver very small amount of steroids directly to the lung. Of course, there are people who are going to respond, right? And there are children who have other diseases, who have other immune diseases that might require prednisolone, which is an oral steroid, right? We have young people who have lupus and who have to take steroids to control the disease and other stuff. So, as far as is possible, we try to avoid having to give that child a steroid. If it is necessary, as in the case of respiratory illnesses and asthma in particular, you give an inhaled steroid. There are kids who have tumors, who have cancer.
I mean, I just use that as an example. But I was more speaking generally about medications that can actually be a risk factor in obesity. I mean, I just use prednisone as an example. But generally,
some medications that we use to treat emotional disorders and stuff can actually make you put on weight. But you see, you have to know and you have to create a balance, because sometimes just make the child hungry, okay, and they will eat a little more, right? But you have to create a balance and really help the family to change their nutrition behaviors to suit the fact that you already have a disadvantage to keep them healthy otherwise. I'll tell you something. I remember working in the ER as a young physician when they started making a drug that can actually prevent the recurrent asthmatic attack. Because we'd have kids who come to the ER, spend 2 days this week, and you treat the asthma attack that they having. But they go home to the same trigger factors and they come back. And then we found, I think it was Janssen, made this drug, don't remember the name, but it can keep that reaction where the asthma comes on, right? And all the children start to get fat because they use so much of the energy that they consume to breathe when they were having severe asthmatic attacks and recurrent asthmatic attacks. That once you cut it down, you were able to obliterate those attacks, everybody started to put on weight. And then we needed to talk to the parents and try to help them. Apart from the fact that the medication can increase the appetite, the kids all started getting fat. And that's, you have to be, we as clinicians, we who treat children, have to figure out, especially the pediatricians who treat them over a long-term for thing, have to be able to recognize, and we have to know what is it that would make you put on weight. Okay. But that's not the majority of children. We are concerned about the majority of children who are in our schools and in our communities, right? Who don't have that balance between consuming appropriate quality of food, consuming the right quantity of food as per distribution of food groups, and the right quantity as per how much of each you eat. So you can eat vegetables and fruit as your snack. You can eat vegetables and a protein, but you can eat a whole lot of carbs and simple carbs. Those processed products, like I said, that you eat it raises your blood sugar very quickly, right? And then your pancreas comes in with the insulin and stores all the surplus. Puts away all the surplus, right? And you have to be able to control that, because after a while your pancreas goes, and very early, if you're continuously given high carbohydrates, especially those highly processed carbohydrates, not the complex, the simple carbs, right? As opposed to giving a child a ground provision or some like pumpkin and those kind of vegetables that have a lot of fiber and take a much longer time to digest. Right? We have to be able to tell parents how it goes. Parents have to be willing. The truth is that this is not something I alone can do as a physician. It's going to have to be me, the principal, the lady who run the talk shop, the mothers. Do you understand? What is allowed to come into our country? Like I tell you, in Mexico, you're not allowed to give the children ramen. The government says, no, thank you. Our children are not eating that foolishness, right? Because of the challenges that they've seen with it. The point is, it has to be a collective. I can't do it alone. You can't do it by sitting on the radio. Jane can't do it in the office. The pediatricians can't do it. The school alone can't do it. The Food and Nutrition Council. But parents, children, everybody, families, communities, all have to come together and recognize that childhood obesity is a big problem that we have to have an integrative approach towards. The Ministry of Trade has to decide what we can we ordering so much of X. We kind of need to come and advise the government as to, here, this is not good. And you know how they dump their old foods. We get something that's cheap and people buy it. But it's something that they can't sell elsewhere because of the salt content, the carbohydrate content, the fact that it's nutritionally empty. It doesn't give the child the vitamins and the minerals and other stuff that they need for appropriate growth and body repair and brain function and all the rest of it, right? We have to have the Ministry of Infrastructure. Where are the places for our children to run up and down and play? If I'm building a school, am I going to build it in the middle of a town where there's no way for the children to be able to run outside and play, where there's no time, there's no playground, no monkey bars and stuff that the children can go and stretch their bodies and run and even play ring a roses. Those are the things we have to take into consideration. Where everybody's responsibility is. And of course, having good relationships with parents. And my dream is for a national PTA that works. So parents can come with their problems and we can come with our concerns and we can all work this out together. And I hope parents and grandparents are listening. And I wish we have a National Grandparents Association as well, because they will be the ones who can make a change. Because your granny and your auntie, your granny will say, "Child, your mother so," but your auntie will give you the nice food, even if it's not good for you. Right? You go for and spend time, and she will give you all the nice things that she hasn't had a chance to give you in the last year.
Right.
So it must be, we have to take that integrated approach towards curbing childhood obesity. We have a problem. We have a problem that is constantly growing, and we all together have to come. The Ministry of Agriculture has to develop its own policy to ensure that food is secure. I worry about Carriacou. That was my greatest worry for Carriacou when the hurricane came. People put some plant in their food, they had fruits and everything. And then here comes a hurricane and we have to feed them. What do we feed them? Products that are processed, right? And because they have to eat. But we have to be concerned about that nutritional balance, that it is maintained in our children.
Right. So we've spoken a lot and we've mentioned childhood obesity a lot, and all of that. I want us now look at, and Dr. Nixon, you just reiterate the fact that childhood obesity is a major problem. So Dr. Now, let me come to you. And very specific. I think we now understand what childhood obesity is. Why is childhood obesity a major problem? And let's go into some details.
Some what?
Details. Yeah, some details.
It's a problem because of where it leads. All right? It's not just how a child looks or it's like, what does this lead to? We talked a little bit last week about how a child with obesity is much more likely to become an adult with obesity, right? And we know that having excess fat in the body. You hearing me, Sonia? You can still hear me?
Very little, but I'm trying.
Yeah, I don't know.
Go ahead, Jane.
So I think a child who becomes an obese adult or an obese young adult, all right? When you have layers of fat in your body, which is basically what obesity is, it increases the amount of inflammation around organs. It also changes the hormones in your body. So especially for a woman, it changes the levels of estrogen, etc. in your body. So that has a direct effect. So you're more likely to have a higher cholesterol. You're more likely to have fat deposited and damage to your arteries. You're more likely to have high blood pressure as a direct result of that obesity. So if you have high blood pressure, you're more likely to have a stroke. All right? And have lasting, either die or have lasting damage from it. And strokes at a younger age. So whether you heard about strokes in your grandparents, now it's in your parents and potentially even in your older teenage kids. High blood pressure. All right, if you move down the body, the same effect you see on the heart. So the arteries that feed the heart muscle, blood, and oxygen, they can become blocked. You have a heart attack. All right. In somewhere like Grenada, there's very limited resources and accessibility to any kind of treatment of that. Stenting of arteries, bypasses, etc. Right, your heart muscle will be damaged. potentially, and that's lifelong, and your life expectancy is going to be cut short, right? You move down and you can have a fatty liver. So if the liver becomes fatty, it's more likely you have liver failure. But the liver is basically the clearance agents of your body. It takes the toxins out of your body. It's important for everything, right? So if your liver begins to fail, I mean, that bad news, all right? Then you can have fatty gallstones. So people may have heard of the gallbladder, which just lies just below the liver. It stores bile. The bile helps you absorb fat, which is kind of ironic, really. But that can become inflamed, extremely painful, very painful. Often might have to have it operated on, so there's risks of surgery. Can become infected and worse, right? You move down the body, you've got your pancreas. So your pancreas, which we just talked about, the pancreas releases insulin, which is what helps control your sugar levels. So if you are having to produce more insulin in batches, partly because of the diet you're eating and because of the effects of the inflammation on the pancreas, your body doesn't react to your insulin the way it did. All right, so it becomes almost resistant to the insulin that you're producing, and then the cells they have difficulty, they're overworking, they can't produce enough insulin. And so you end up with type 2 diabetes, but not as a 60-year-old, as a 35-year-old. All right, and as we all know, diabetes leads to all sorts of complications. All right, I mean, you move around the body, right? So with the diabetes and hypertension, you're damaging your kidneys. Right? There is dialysis in Grenada. It's very expensive and it's limited. We don't have enough of it for the number of people who have kidney damage, right? So you're dying at a young age because you can't get dialysis, and we don't do kidney transplants in Grenada. And if you go away, very, very expensive, almost impossible to get. All right, young people with kidney disease. All right, go on. I mean, you can also just get skin infections. You have folds from the excess tissue and fat, so you get rashes. You can get fungal infections, which are unpleasant, itchy, nasty, and in this heat, not pleasant. So we keep going. Bone density. With obesity, you get a reduction in bone density. Now, for a woman, as you move towards menopause, your bone density and your demineralization of your bones can cause osteoporosis. So if you're already obese, that is going to be accelerated, and your muscle mass tends to drop. So you have more fat and less muscle mass, right? So you have less balance, all right? And then you have weight that's on your joints. We all get sore joints. I have sore joints, right? I'm sure Sonia has bad knees, all right? But if you are carrying extra weight, just imagine the physics of it. It's like squashing a spring. If you put a small box on a spring, it only goes down a little bit. If you put a big box, you're compressing. So, knees and ankle joints and hip joints are not supposed to carry a certain weight. Your body is designed to carry the weight you should be. Right, so you already have a lack in muscle mass. All right, the weight factors are moving where they shouldn't, and then you've got all this weight on top of it. So you end up with osteoarthritis, really painful joints. You have damage to your back, etc., etc. All right, I can keep going. You have sleep issues. So there's a thing called sleep apnea. All right, so when you are overweight and obese, and you have it's almost like pressure on the trachea, all right? And the tongue can become a little floppy when you go to sleep. And you hear people snoring. So people who are obese, they snore, all right? And why that is because when they go to sleep and they relax, they have slight blockage to their windpipe. So they have difficulty getting the oxygen into their body. So they actually become what we call hypoxic. So the oxygen content going around the body reduces. They can suffer from nightmares from that, and disturbed sleep. So then they're not getting a full night's sleep, even though they think they're asleep. So then they're exhausted the next morning, right? So it's like they're not getting the sleep, but it is also a cause of high blood pressure, all right? So you have sleep apnea, you're more likely to have high blood pressure, right? So it's, and then as we talked about, you have the mental effect as well, which is huge because, as I say, you can have the mental effects that compound and cause some of the overeating, the lack of exercise, the lack of confidence, body confidence. You have body shaming. You have children who don't want to go to running practice and athletics practice because the coaches body shame them, the students body shame them, and they're embarrassed and they don't do it. So it compounds the whole issue. And you end up with a very sad child. And we know that, there's a lot of pressure with CXC, even with CPEA, the amount of pressure children are put in to perform and come in the top so many, and we've forgotten that they're children, and children of 9 and 10 and 11 should be enjoying life, not everything about being in school and what they produce academically. And the one thing that they need to release their stress, which is playing and exercise, is the one thing they stop doing. The parents stop them going to after-school activities because they want them in extra classes. The worst thing you could do for a child, I'm sorry, but the worst thing. Every child needs a release valve. And so then with the obesity, they're less likely to go and have that release valve. And it's a vicious circle. So that in a nutshell is all the bad things about childhood obesity moving into adult obesity, all those things. It's pretty much every organ in the body can be affected.
Dr. Nixon, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I want to add what we're doing. I want to add the good part because it's important. I think it's very important that we look at what the possible end, what the products are of if we allow obesity to take over our children. But there are things we can do. We talked about what you eat at home and stuff. Today was World Obesity Day, and the Chronic Disease Commission collaborated with the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Sports, Ministry of Agriculture through food and Greater Food and Nutritional Council, and somebody else, Ministry of Health, right? To just offer options, because we have to do something. And I believe every mickle makes a muckle. Every little thing we do would add up, okay? So today, and for the rest of the week, schools have the opportunity to have a water-only day. Because I hear our children drink 4 sodas a day. Our children don't work anywhere. They can't afford 4 sodas a day, okay? Parents, learn that. And water is what is a fluid that children can have that can very safely replace the sugar-sweetened beverages that we give them. And even when we make drinks at home, we kind of make it. Well, the brackish part is a fruit, and the content is the sugar. You understand? The flavor is the sugar. We have to use more of our natural fruits. We have fruits. I have grapefruit at the back of my house. People have oranges. We've had mandarins. You can give a child an orange to go to school with a bottle of water. That's juice, believe it or not. All right? So I don't want to big up some schools, and I really want to. Today, Presentation Brothers College, through the Rotary young people, school people, and Grenville Christian Academy, and other schools, but those 2 schools in particular had a couple of things to create awareness in their school, one of obesity, and to show what we can do. So they had a dance exercise. Go figure, the PVC boys out on the court with their teachers dancing, right? With that in mind, that this is a simple, inexpensive, can happen anytime activity, right? Because we into the issue of physical activity. I'm not asking anybody to run like Lyndon or Kirani. I'm just saying get active, start moving. Anything you're doing now, do a little more than you have been doing, okay? Take away the handheld devices. Those 2 schools today not only did that, but they observed water-only day. There are other schools. Tomorrow, I know one of the social media people is proposing water-only, and he had 500 people saying, yeah, I'm going to have water-only. In other islands in the Caribbean, they do a water-only Wednesday, where everybody, adults and children, and of course, parents have to lead by example. because I don't like water, because I'm accustomed to drinking sweet drinks, doesn't mean I have to encourage my children, especially if I'm going to be ablating my child's pancreas and causing my child to have diseases. And I heard Jane talk about a 35-year-old, but the truth is, like I said, we have 20-year-olds who have the same kind of diabetes that their grandmothers have, because they respond to the same medication. They were born with pancreases that function. Okay, they're born with organs that function, but through the bad food we give to our children, the fact that we made them so sedentary so they don't burn out all the food that they consume, right? Our children have developed diabetes and hypertension very early. It means that your kidney is going to fail by the time you're 35 years old. Because after 20 years, you really start having problems, especially if you do not recognize and do not treat the diabetes as it has to be. And that's unfair because our children deserve better.
Right.
And so we have to think about collective things that we have to do to ensure as a nation, all of us participate. Okay? This week, we have looked at chronic diseases. We look at how we prevent chronic diseases through the prevention of obesity in our children. There are a couple other things. I know the Rotary president is on, and he can talk about the walk-on thing, but that is something active. Do it in your church. I don't care. Go for a walk. Say prayers walking around the church. Let the children get up and play clap hand games, and it don't cost anything. We have to be very aware of the fact that we need to become a lot more physical than we currently are. Are you allowing your children as a teacher to go outside and run for 10 minutes or get them and sing in a class and dance and breathe and be active? That is activity, okay? How are we going to be creative, especially in things that nobody needs to buy Nike sneakers or whatever, Reebok T-shirts and sweaters and headbands and all the rest. We can do very simple things that can increase the level of activity. And there is water abundantly in Grenada for us to be able to consume instead of consuming these really toxic and really bad for us sugar-sweetened beverages, especially if you're going to have it every day.
Okay, thank you. So, Doc, I'm going to come back to you and Dr. Noel shortly, but we've been joined by, I think, the president of the Rotary Club, Mr. Wade. Mr. Wade, good evening and welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invite, and I truly appreciate it for the opportunity.
Yes, indeed. Well, I've learned that the Rotary Club has joined in raising the awareness as it relates to childhood obesity and all of that. Share with us what's been happening.
Well, so Rotary International, and by extension, Rotary clubs all over the world, have a number of areas of focus, and one of it is maternal and child health. And so our district 730, which spans from Guadeloupe down to Suriname and Guyana, saw the opportunity to focus and help raise awareness for childhood obesity. And so that is something that we've been undertaking for a number of years now to try and educate the persons in our individual communities the importance of not having a sedentary child, if you will. I mean, your doctors have talked about the impact of sugar and all of these things. So with Rotary, we're looking to help people get motivated to move. And that's why we've created the walk. I don't know how many of your listeners are aware that the Rotary Club of Grenada are custodians of Quarantine Park. Yes. And at Quarantine Park, it's a wonderful open air space that families can visit. You know, they can go have a picnic. But in the last couple of years, we've put a walking trail out at Quarantine Park. If you visited during Christmas at the Point, you may have seen the tuk-tuk driving around that. That is intended for any Grenadian, any visitor. You don't have to pay to go to the park, to utilize the space for a healthier understanding of living and a better way to get exercise. I know as we get older, I know we're talking about childhood obesity, but as you get older, walking on the beach is not as easy to do. So here, we're inviting all to come to Quarantine Park and get their exercise in, whether it's a walk, whether it's a run, you do push-ups or whatever you do. But on the 8th, most specifically to childhood obesity, on the 8th of March, which will be this Saturday at 4 p.m., we are sponsoring a walk, which will start at Quarantine Park. We'll walk down, make a loop around Montrouge Park, and then past the South St. George police station and back up to Quarantine Park. Now, once you get back to Quarantine Park, we have a number of things going on that Dr. Sonia will, better apt to speak about the different things that we're doing. But, we have Nutrition Council teaching people how to cook better foods that are healthier for us. We'll do blood pressure checks, as well as a number of other things that are happening out there. We're hoping to see a large number of individuals. You'll get up there and you will not see one soda. We want everyone to be drinking water. We have a young man promised to bring and have coconut water on hand there instead of, so something a little bit more natural to drink rather than rather than the processed foods and the various drinks that we have. But so through our club, we're using all of our might, our social media reach, an extension, our friends in the communities. We're trying to get the word out. And this shouldn't be a one-time event, even though we do this annually. We want everyone who participates to realize it should not be an annual event in your life to get moving. You should be moving every day in order to avoid this problem, and to set a good example for parents, to set a good example for their kids. As a young boy, I remember I was born in Guelph, lived there until I was about 11 years old. I remember on Sundays after church, we walked to go see family members. Now, guaranteed, I'm 50-something years old. Back then, not everyone had a car to drive everywhere. So we had to walk everywhere. And I would venture to say, my child's mind, there were very few obese children at that point in time, at that younger age. And so many of those individuals may have forgotten how active they were and how much they played outside, but now we tend to play inside because we have the technology to do so, unfortunately. And so from the Rotary Club of Grenada, I implore your listeners to come join us and hear what all these medical providers have to say, and find a way to implement it in their lives and their family lives and spread the word.
Okay, wonderful. And that's this Saturday at Quarantine?
This Saturday at 4 p.m.
Okay, wonderful indeed. Well, folks, you heard it. And I think in recent times we've developed a little subculture for walking. Whenever there's a walk, and we've heard of different organizations putting on these walks, and they do get excellent turnout. So I'm certain people are going to come out, and we're encouraging people to come out and be part of that. The weather is nice now, so hey, coming out on Saturday, I'll be there. Take a little walk around Quarantine, and by doing that, you're having fun as well. So you're having fun, and you're remaining healthy. So that's important. But Mr. Will, we'll come back to you shortly. I just want to, before we wrap, because time is going by quickly, Dr. Noel and Dr. Nixon, we understand the challenges in dealing with patients, for example, with diabetes and hypertension. The medication, in the case of diabetes, the needles and all of these things, we know it's a challenge. But just consider for a moment, and I've been doing that, children, and we've seen children who are diabetic. Let's talk a little bit about the care for diabetic children who, because of obesity, have acquired chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension. How do we deal with it? Dr. Noel, you want to go first?
So who goes first?
Well,
I mean, Sonia, you can go first. I don't mind.
So the truth is, luckily, in either cases, whether it's children who are born with diabetes, born with a pancreas that is not producing any insulin, or children who have acquired diabetes because of lifestyle. It's not a lot of children, but there are children, and we see an increased tendency. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about the children who are born and in 2 years they develop diabetes. I'm talking about the adolescents. So there's supposed to be an adolescent health policy that should take into consideration taking care of that population. I know Dr. Matthias is very instrumental, especially in the children with type 1, which is you're born with diabetes and you're born to have diabetes now and as a child, and your pancreas doesn't produce insulin and you have to take insulin. He's been very, 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 very instrumental in supporting that population. But like I said, it's not a whole lot of people, but they exist. The issue of younger people having diabetes is of great concern for the health services. Hypertension, well, at least we have hearts, but we are really, really very concerned about the younger people. Especially younger people are more prone to be in denial. That I don't have that. And in the interim, while they're not taking care of the disorders, the organs are being damaged. So it means that all of us as primary health caregivers are going to have to be aware as to what to look out for, and looking out for it, how to support. Because one of the things that is important, like all my diabetics have to go for nutrition counseling, they have to go see the podiatrist, they have to go to the dentist, they have to go to the ophthalmologist. And if they have a chance and they can go to a nephrologist, they can afford it, go, because you want a baseline. Because half of the times, by the time you discover that somebody actually has diabetes, they've had it so long they already have damage to their organs. So you need them to go get checked. But we are going to have to put a special space for our young people who have diabetes in particular. Hypertension has Hearts Initiative and they have all the medications. Diabetes, not yet. We're going to have to put in place systems that take care of these chronic diseases that appear so early in our young people. But you know my position. Let's try and avoid it wherever we can, so we don't have our young people suffering so very early in their life, becoming so useless to themselves because they can't work, they can't go to school, because they develop a disease, severe disease very early. If their kidneys fail, worse yet, it costs so much. Dialysis here costs $700 a week, and that's cheap. Okay, that's subsidized dialysis. Some people pay more, but average $750, I think. Right? Guess what? Can't afford to sustain that if you're 30 years old and you live to 70 years. Are you going to sustain that? Especially if you can't work. How does the healthcare system fare if you have to usurp all of the energy, all of the possibilities of healthcare to everybody else to take care of one person with chronic disease? So, in short, the children with type 1 diabetes who don't have whose pancreas have not developed, there's a program, and like I said, Dr. Matthias tend to see them, and the pediatricians. Okay, they follow up. They have the high-tech machine that they have tried, apparatus that they apply to their bodies to check the sugar on ongoing. They get a little more education. My fear is that we might miss the other group, because we don't expect them to, when in truth and in fact they do. So it means that we're going to have to educate our own population of health caregivers to be on the lookout for what are new trends in chronic disease in our younger population.
Okay.
And I think that's where the whole health checks, while a child, hopefully that will be something that will be eventually in the school policy, that, a child every year has to have a health check before they can go back into school, and those things. So those things are picked up and not just left, with the child running with a slightly high sugar, the child running with a high blood pressure that isn't picked up because they've not had the blood pressure checked, because people think, oh, well, they're young, they're not going to have high blood pressure,
Right. Critical. Well, Dr. Noel, Dr. Nixon, Mr. Wade, we're out of time, unfortunately. So I would just give you a minute or so just to make your closing remarks. And Mr. Wade, we'll start with you, so you can, make your final pitch for the walk on Saturday.
Certainly. I would say this, that old saying, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. That's what we're trying to help and encourage people by moving. That's an ounce of prevention that you can implement in your life. It doesn't take anything but you just getting up and move those legs. So please come and join us, but don't let that be the only time you go on a walk. You want a safe place to walk, you can do so at Quarantine Park. because I know, the roads are a little treacherous these days. We have more cars than people, it seems. But please join us and then make it a habit in your life.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Nixon, your closing remarks?
My final words is that yes, we can. Yes, we can collectively come together and stem this really burgeoning epidemic. We don't have money to take care of it down the road. We don't have money to take care of people. But I think collectively, as a community, as a people, we can really implement practices with the support of the government and policies and other things that make our children healthier. In reintroducing exercise into school and all of those things, water being a preferred beverage, and going from water Wednesday to water Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm not saying not to have a sweet drink once in a while, but it must not be. Removing all of the snacks that are sold around our schools, and with no disrespect to the vendors, and I understand you need to make a living, but I don't think that should be an incitement for our children to want to have more sweets because it's available. Parents, be aware, work with us, develop your own strategies at home. And of course, I want to, because I didn't hear all that my president said, because I'm also Rotarian. Saturday is very important to all of us as Grenadians. It's a place, yes, we're going to walk, but then there's opportunity for testing your blood sugar and your blood pressure. And bring your children, please, because we're going to do some BMIs. The Food and Nutrition Council is going to do BMIs for our children to see, so we can look at our child and say, oh, your child is fine. Oh, your child is on this percentile. Oh, it's under that percentile, and he's fine. And there are going to be some colleagues who will be there. If your pressure is a little high, or if you just want to talk about how do I keep my pressure down, what other things, there are going to be some doctors around to talk about, so you can sit and talk. We are not writing prescription. It's not a clinic. This is a health fair where we're going to get a lot of knowledge. That is what we'd like to have on Saturday. And above all, we want to invite everybody to come and see what Quarantine Park has to offer for families when it comes to physical activity, movement. I wanted to make a point that I hadn't had a chance to make publicly. A few months ago, the Prime Minister opened a playground up in St. David's, and I think that's one of the greatest gifts to preventing childhood obesity. He says he's going to do the next one in St. David's, and I'd like to see other people follow. I'd like to see communities. I know they have been fixing a lot of the play fields and stuff. I want to see people go there and walk and run, and MPs and other opposition members put facilities so we can become the active nation we're required to be. Parents, you don't have to drag the child from dance up at top of Lucas Street down to a convent. They can walk that. We used to walk that. We used to walk that to school. Get our children up there. Take away, limit the handheld, because the only thing that's strong with the handheld is the two thumbs. Limit all of those. Let's all come together. It's just little things we can do to make a big impact.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nixon. Dr. Noel, your final words?
I mean, Sonia will be there, I'll be there, Mr. Wade will be there, we'll be all there giving our time and supporting people. We will be walking, we'll be skipping, we'll be challenging the kids to races. All right, I'm a firm believer of leading by example, and that goes as a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, whatever role you play, that a child will look at you and want to emulate what you do. Let us all act in a way that we want our children to behave. So I would say parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and friends, come out as a family. I think to treat childhood obesity, you need the whole family. And I will say, Mr. Wade, I love Quarantine Point, and my mother-in-law, who is in her 90s, with her friends, they go and walk at Quarantine Point. So at that age, they are still active and fit, probably fitter than half of us. All right, so it has opened up a safe space for people of all ages, not just the young, to actually continue their activity and safety. So I think Quarantine Park is an amazing place. So please come out. If you haven't seen it, come and see it. you know.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Noel. So, folks, that's all the time we have. I just want to close by just reminding you the importance of ensuring that your children, they, as much as possible, eat what is right, the healthy foods, lots of water to avoid childhood obesity, because we know what that can lead to. I mean, both Dr. Noel and Dr. Nixon, they've spoken at length on what can happen, the diabetes, the hypertension, the strokes, all of these things, the fatty livers, all of these things can happen if you fail, or if we fail to control, childhood obesity. So I hope that at least there's something that you've taken from the program. We look forward to being back with you next Tuesday at the same time for another Doctrine Call. Thank you very much, and do have a good night. All the best.
Drug abuse, cancer,
measles, diabetes, AIDS, cancer,
drug abuse, cancer,
measles, diabetes,